Hello, everyone. Real pleasure today to be here from Red Cloud. We have a wonderful relationship with Minds and Money. They really do throw a fantastic gathering here. I have some esteemed colleagues on the panel with me today. I'd like to introduce them. Roland Chavasse. Roland, come on up. Anthony Viljoen. Per Wimmer. And Christopher Brown. Come on up and have a seat. Oh, did he? Oh, sorry. Apologize. Thanks, Andy. So my esteemed panel up here today, we're gonna discuss lithium. It's a very interesting topic today. And I thought for the viewers here, I'm not going to have a slide presentation, but I'm going to put up the odd slides so that we can speak to it, because I do believe infographics say a lot. Could I have the first one up, please? Just 1 minute. We still got our profiles up there. I gave them some slides this morning. It might be a minute just getting them up and rolling here. While we're waiting for the slides, could we just go from the end and introduce ourselves? Roland, do you mind taking the mic and just introducing yourself? We'll take the time, yeah. Just switch.
Morning, good morning. We're good, excellent. Hi everyone, my name is Roland Chavasse. I am the co-founder and secretary general of the International Lithium Association. We are the global trade association for the lithium industry, representing about 85% of global lithium output based on last year's tonnage, with another 40 members from down the value chain. We believe that lithium is the future. We call it the lithium century. So that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you, Roland. My name is Christopher Brown. I'm the CEO of HeliosX Lithium Technologies Corp. Our focus is exploration of lithium brines around the world. We have assets in Argentina, in the United States, and Canada. But part of our focus is determining what would be the best direct lithium extraction techniques to apply to any specific reservoir and manage those type of systems going forward. But thank you very much for the invite for the Minds and Money today.
My name is Wimmer from Wimmer Family Office. Our current focus is on late-stage mining finance, so the BFS, DFS going into production or expanding our production stage. We do a whole bunch of other things, but I won't bore you with it at this stage.
I'm Anthony Viljoen, CEO of Afritin Mining. We're listed on AIM here in London. We've got a producing asset in Namibia, one of the biggest open-cast tin mines in the world, and associated with that is one of the biggest open-cast lithium mines in the world that we're looking to bring on as a byproduct revenue in the next 12 months. So very excited to be talking about a new product stream for us.
And lastly, Andy Phillips from Lithium Power International in Australia. We've got two assets or two projects in the Chilean Miracle Salar is our brine asset, a very highly advanced development asset close to construction. And our second asset is in Western Australia, where we've got a number of holdings in both around the biggest mine in the world, the Wimmer mine. We've got about 1,000 square kilometers around that area. And but our focus is in Chile, where we're looking at getting close to construction of our mines.
Thanks, gentlemen. If I could just have the next slide, please. So the first slide, and I'm going to, they have it in front of them here, but the first slide is courtesy of friends of ours at the BMI group. And I thought it's quite an interesting slide to open up our session here. As you can see from the center bar graph, the current 2022 supply, global supply number for lithium is 678,000 tons. The projection for 2035 is a 4 million ton lithium market. So I would suggest to you that it's very rare in the mining industry you get to see that type of demand pull out into the future. So the other, right below that, you'll see an infograph. The average lithium mine is 45,000 tons in the world. And without a tremendous amount of battery recycling, it will require 59 new projects to come into production. And so I just wanted to start with that and see if I could get some commentary from each of those on the daunting task ahead of the lithium industry. And if you agree with the forecasts.
I'll go first, okay, so I've got the microphone. Yes, demand is going to outsupply for a long, long time. We've seen the pricing go up the last 2 or 3 years of lithium. The key thing also to get a battery-grade lithium is different from just getting a lithium. So 99.5% is the battery lithium grade. And mines, or the brine mines that we focus on in lithium power, it's a slow process to get the lithium off. It takes at least between 9 to 12 months to go and get lithium produced from the brines using the traditional evaporation process. So yes, it's going to be a long time, I think, before, and we've seen that the increase of lithium production has increased fourfold in the last decade. But it's still a long, long way to meet demand.
I would like to echo that, but very importantly, I think there's a growing realization that all of these promises that governments have made about moving towards electric vehicles and the green transition, nobody is really thinking about where the supply of these commodities is going to come from. And I mean, now that we are already in production and have built a mine basically from ground up, there's also a real lack of understanding what it actually takes to build a mine from scratch. We've managed to put together a world-class team of engineers and geologists, and we've managed to execute a large-scale project and expanded on that project, and we'll be expanding on that by bringing the lithium into production. But a lot of our colleagues, in the junior mining space, it's very easy to mine on a spreadsheet, and but until you understand how your ore body works, and to bring that ore body into production, you'll realize that even if you promise all these mines, to actually find and develop these mines, it's a massive task. And I do believe that in the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be a huge realization of just how little lithium there is available for batteries and for the energy transition. And it's amazing to see that there's just such a lack of new mines actually coming into production. So Bruce, I think that definitely lithium is going to be the flavor of the month. Especially for all of your car manufacturers, lithium is going to be the new oil.
Yeah, our take on it is that within the battery space, the battery metal space, nickel was a big concern, probably the biggest concern as of late, but that has eased off now. So I think nickel is under control, ish. But lithium is still very much a problem area, in particular till 2025. I mean, if you do the numbers we have on the screen here, it's about 8 mines a year you need to put on stream. And in the short term, I find that hard to see that we're going to be able to catch up with that deficit. And I think, if anything, the automakers are pushing more aggressively ahead on the EV transition. So if anything, demand is likely to rise. So between now and 2025, definitely quite a bit of a short squeeze. I think after that, you will see more mines coming on stream, and life will get a little bit more balanced, and you will see that on the price for the commodity. So don't expect the price to continue to go higher and higher, but it will stay at a high level for some time. The structural case is very much there, very, very much there, and that goes for all the battery metals for sure. But lithium is short-term the biggest concern.
Great, thank you, Per. Just to add to it from an exploration standpoint, what we look for when we're entering these jurisdictions is resources and the distribution of existing identified resources in these areas. And for example, like in Argentina, there's over 100 million tons of lithium already identified as a resource. The issue highlighted is converting that resource identification into a reserve. And so layering on top of it time to mine life, we have a lot of geopolitical issues to overcome. We've worked with indigenous communities we have to overcome, and it's just an ongoing process. So a lot of the hurdles to success to achieve the 4 million tons by 2035 is part of the onus is on us to really work with the indigenous communities better, to work with the governments better, to enhance and realize the way that we can do this in an environmentally friendly manner. But 4 million tons is achievable. The resources identified. It's the hurdles to success on the other fronts that we have to overcome. Thank you.
Gosh, it can be difficult to go at the end of a panel when everyone's picked off all the good points already.
You get to start the next one.
Oh, much obliged. Oh dear, I just shot myself in the foot, haven't I? Never mind. The good news is that lithium is abundant. There's loads of lithium in the planet. It's the 25th most abundant element on the Earth in the lithosphere. The second thing is obviously, clearly, the financial awareness. The investors are coming in, they understand the need for it. The political awareness is finally catching up. We're seeing this in the IRA, we're seeing movement in Europe. Of course, our friends in the East have been there for some time already. And the technology's coming on. We're seeing more sources coming on, unusual, rare, unproven sources of lithium. We need every single atom to get where we're going, to go through this tipping point in industrial history. We need every single atom. And yeah, it's really exciting to sit up here and see so many people looking for it and finding it and producing it.
Thanks, Roland. Let me switch to the next slide. So this is the next slide. It's courtesy of a good friend of Red Cloud's, Matt Watson, at a consulting firm out of California. And it really just depicts the all-electric emission requirements by government and the timeline to a carbon neutral net zero 2050 roadmap. And I put this up for a couple of reasons. One, to sort of back up the slide you saw before with the type of lithium demand that we're sort of depicting. But I also thought Anthony pointed out something when he answered the last question that it's very relevant to this. Whether it's governments, whether it's OEM automakers, they've gone full head into the world of the necessity for electric vehicles and an energy transition. What they've I wouldn't say forgotten about, but have not been top of mind for the last 3-4 years and is just starting to turn in a meaningful way now, is the recognition that the mining industry isn't the enemy. The mining industry is the salvation for this dream. Without it, it's not empowered. And we saw it a lot in certain commodities like this summer with the EU changing their stance on uranium as a green fuel. And there's other examples of governments and mindsets from the mainstream stopping to demonize mining and realize that if it's done responsibly and carefully, it could really be the answer to what the world has as a grave question. And so I'll start with Roland if he wants to make any comments on.
Thank you, Bruce. If I may, can I just have a bit of an audience participation? So if you have a car, a 4-wheeled electric car that you can sit in, can you put your hand up? Nice and tall, don't be shy. Nothing to be ashamed of. Okay, 2, 4, gentlemen carrying a phone, that doesn't count. Okay, 4 out of, let's say, 100 people. I think that illustrates the fact that we've got a long way to go. However, having said that, look where we were 3 years ago. People were starting to catch sniffles, starting to sneeze, coming back from holidays in China. Look where we are now. We've got 5 revolutionary virus immunization techniques. We've got billions of people with their vaccines. When the political will mixes with the political capital and the financial capital, we as a species can achieve incredible things. It's daunting. Cynics might say it's not possible. I believe it is possible. We just have to find the way.
Great, thank you, Roland. It's interesting to evaluate the EV market in general. When we look at projections going into 2030, China will likely hold 60% of the EVs in the world. They've already 10 years ago have determined to go down the critical mineral path and secure the necessary resources to achieve that. So from a percentage ownership basis, China's well ahead of the rest of us for EV ownership and understanding of where the critical minerals are and how to source them and to move things along fairly efficiently. What we need to do now is catch up. Our electrical grid systems are behind in order to incorporate EV across Europe, and we're definitely behind in North America. So there's a lot more investments that needs to be done to achieve a lot of the EV targets that you're seeing here today. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to take too much time.
In my opinion, there's been 2 main drivers of the whole EV market. Number one has been government regulations, as we see here, obviously incentivizing everybody to drive electric. You don't have to go far. Just look at London. If you're driving on London streets, when you park an electric car, you get a discount, and you get treated in a different way when it comes to various government charges. So there's definitely the incentive schemes that are pushing things in the right direction and government regulation. In the short term, though, there's perhaps been a little bit of a setback on the government side because of the war in Ukraine, where suddenly we've gone from being sort of on a straight trajectory to a greener economy across the board, not just cars, but also utility and energy generation. That has certainly suffered some setbacks, first under Trump when he was there in the Paris Accord, but secondly also under the stress and pressure and sort of panicky situation that we have in terms of energy supply because of the war. The second element or second person who's changed the EV sector massively, specifically, is Elon Musk. Many people tried and failed before starting electric car companies. Elon did it, and then did it in a way that revolutionized the world. So a lot of kudos to him for doing it. Previous attempt was always bought up by the big Detroit automakers or shut down in other ways. So this revolution is real, and that will drive demand for battery metals very, very significantly. There's a couple of negative dynamics going on at the moment. The most important one of them at the moment is the resource nationalism that's creeping in again. Certainly a problem for China, at least, which are being kicked out of Canada when it comes to lithium. And Australia is also making a lot of noises, let alone the South American political issues where there's a general tendency, not just in lithium, towards nationalism. So we have these counter dynamics, which again is going to put more pressure on where the supply goes, etc. So not a straightforward picture, but there's no doubt about the direction of travel here. EV will have a fantastic future, and so will lithium.
Yes. So, look, Per. Yeah. So just to elaborate on what Per's saying, what we found is that there's just this bizarre geopolitical situation evolving in the world at the moment. Everyone's talking about EVs, but just to emphasize that there's no conversion facility currently on a large scale in Europe or in America, although I believe they're catching up in America. But people are building gigafactories to take batteries, but nobody is building conversion facilities and building mines to source that lithium to go into these conversion facilities. And China has got a huge advantage here. I mean, they are building conversion facilities like you can't believe, and on a scale that I've never seen before. And I think when the realization comes into all of the German car manufacturers, to all of the American car manufacturers, that just how far behind they are in terms of the full supply chain for electric vehicles and for batteries in particular. It's going to be quite a cataclysmic scenario, and it blows my mind that we've got every sort of man and his dog coming to us at the moment to try and get an offtake agreement, and there's just such a lack of understanding from European buyers, from European OEMs, and from American buyers and OEMs, just how complex mining and converting lithium chemicals really is. And yes, there's a lot of lithium in the world. It's found in abundance in the Earth's crust, but to actually mine it and produce it at the right scale is incredibly difficult. And I can speak from experience. We've built a mine and are about to bring our lithium into production, and I think that just this whole geopolitical scenario is really going to be exacerbated in the next 12 months when people realize just how intricate it is to bring lithium on stream.
Two more things to add here. Looking at the chart there, the biggest producers of lithium in the world, Chile, Argentina, and Australia, aren't even on that list. So there's a real lag behind from some of the people who produce the lithium. Is it because of a motivational thing by the government, or is it the back pocket dollar? It's frustrating to see that we need a change, and I think the change is happening. But as producers of lithium in Australia and Chile, I'd love to see kind of those countries on that list.
Flip to the next slide. We've sort of done the supply situation in the markets. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this. Is again from the BMI group, the forecast lithium supply curve with all known operational and permitted and feasibility projects that's to come on to 2030. And I would just suggest that it doesn't go right to 2035, but it stays well behind the demand curve. I don't know whether we want to talk to this, or we do want to talk to this? Okay.
Yeah, look, it's just once again to emphasize there's a big difference between mining on a spreadsheet and digging rocks out the ground. Every ore body is different. You can put as many parameters as you like into an Excel spreadsheet, but going to the supply side, I would discount at least 50% of these projects just in terms of the technicalities. Since I've built a mine, I've become very cynical, unfortunately, but I've seen the transition from an Excel spreadsheet into throwing rocks into a plant is two very, very different things.
Add to that too, battery-grade lithium, as I said before, is hard to get hold of. So you can produce lithium, but can all that lithium be used as batteries? And that's the key thing. We have achieved 99.92% purity, which is a pretty good result. But 99.5 is the standard for battery-grade lithium is a key thing for people to get. So as you were saying, kind of a spreadsheet's easy to kind of work out, and you can mine on a spreadsheet, but really it's getting the product out there, which is high quality.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just say that, time will tell whether the spreadsheet exercise is right or wrong. There's usually a delay, sometimes on both sides, actually. Like I said, when we look at price forecast, the actual price for the commodity, we expect that to stabilize somewhat after 2025. So short term, a lot of pressure, but it will start to ease off a bit from a pricing perspective. But the structural case, in terms of the demand, is still very much there for the long run, because there's a lot of people who still need to drive EV cars here, clearly.
Anyone else?
Just a small comment. I think at some point there's going to be a reckoning, a political reckoning, with the politicians deciding whether it's going to be more embarrassing to push those dates back, or would they prefer to make it a government policy to support mining, to support industry, and I don't mean just with purely investment, but also the regulatory framework that we operate within, and the messaging about the need for mining, the importance of mining in society. Just to give you a very, very quick case study. In Europe at the moment, in the European Commission, they are talking, right now, as we speak, they are in the European Commission debating whether lithium carbonate, hydroxide, and chloride should be reclassified as toxic, 1A, the worst type. They're doing this on the back of incredibly thin science. I mean, a tissue has got more substance in this paper. But yet, the ramifications are already being felt around the world. We are seeing protest groups latching onto this and saying, well, crikey, if the EU thinks lithium is toxic, we don't want that lithium mine anywhere near us. And we're like, hang on, guys, it's not even, they're wrong. They haven't done it right. Already, this lack of understanding at a political level, in this case in the European Commission, is having negative ramifications on the viability of mine development right around the world. We need to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, metaphorically like that, and come together to explain to the wider public the benefits, necessity, and really the existential requirement for lithium and lithium mining. You can't have an omelette without breaking eggs.
Roland, wonderful segue. You got ahead into my next slide, actually, with your conversation, because this one talks about the absolute sheer magnitude of investment that needs to go into the industry simply to 2030. This does not extend out to 2035 to meet targets. And I thought you said it best, that life is trade-offs. You cannot have your cities clean and not emit carbon, and yet not mine in places in the world for the elements that are going to allow those things not to emit carbon. And so governments, like if we're gonna get somewhere, it's gonna require governments, it's gonna require regulatory processes being flexible, it's gonna require the mining industry to be responsible, and the mining industry is gonna need help. And I brought this slide up not just for all of that, but also from the fact that there has been a tremendous amount of chatter across the pond where I live in Canada. Elon Musk has been speaking very recently, about the absolute need for Tesla to get into the mining industry because he doesn't believe the mining industry is going to make it on its own. And I think you're going to see, he was obviously, as was pointed out, he's a pioneer and he's the one that led into electric vehicles to begin with. I think he's going to lead a lot of OEMs into vertically integrating out of necessity because it just won't get what they need. So I just wanted to know if anyone wanted to talk to that. Go ahead, Roland.
I would agree that there is a necessity, but as a counter to that, I'd point out that he could have bought the world number 1 and number 2 lithium companies rather than buy Twitter and have a much better asset as well.
That's a different conversation.
That is a different conversation.
That's a free speech conversation.
But
Let's
also,
stay with lithium.
In a previous job, I used to trade Russian chemicals between a Russian state-owned company and a UK, American-owned but UK-based company. And the payment terms for these guys were X, and the payment terms for these guys were Y. And they were never going to do business together. But as a trading company, we could take the risk and do both. And I think quite often these car companies, they like having the cutout, the middleman, because if you're sitting in your desk in the headquarters of a car company, your business is the car business. It's not the mining business. The mining business has got all sorts of risks that you don't understand. A feeling I have is that they like having the cutoff between not having the liability that someone like, let's say, Amnesty International, I don't know if Amnesty is here, you do fantastic work, but let's leave that aside. Amnesty International pointing the finger directly at you and saying, you're a bad guy because of this, and pointing the finger indirectly at you and saying, your suppliers are doing bad stuff. I think that's a major difference in terms of how the risk is perceived by these companies.
Agreed, but I think general attitudes are starting to change. Right? Edge perspectives always tend to stay polarized, but when we were talking about the movement in general mainstream attitudes over the last few years, there's been a tremendous amount of movement.
I hope so. Certainly, we're seeing some very constructive work by the car companies reaching out to the association to talk about lithium, to understand lithium, and not simply hand out edicts about what we have to do.
Yeah, Bruce, it's a very important theme that you've touched on there. If you see what's happening, obviously, inflation is running rife at the moment. As there's a bigger scarcity, and sorry, I think 2025 is a little bit conservative. I think 2030 you'll only start seeing prices stabilize. But as inflation sort of starts to bite, a lot of these car manufacturers are going to have to consider vertically integrating. Not only because of the price inflation, but just in terms of availability of scarce resources. So, I mean, just sort of anecdotally, we've seen that BMW are hiring geologists for the first time. And it's so I think that realization of where the OEMs need to go from a manufacturing point of view and where they need to go from a vertical integration point of view, I think you're going to see a lot more of that coming. Not necessarily that the car manufacturers are going to become miners, but there's going to be a lot more collaboration from that vertical integration of that full supply chain as the shortage gets exacerbated in the next couple of years.
Anyone else, or because we're running late on time? So I put this one up just because a couple of the panelists had mentioned this throughout the other questions, and it is staggering how far China is ahead of the rest of the world in the processing points. You mentioned a number of times, Andrew, about the fact that they're ahead of what we're doing, and it's, Roland was talking about the EU a little bit. Over North America, the Biden administration, that Inflation Reduction Act was really an Energy Transition Act disguised in the term inflation reduction. And they really put a big foot forward on trying to get somewhere with this. Now, it's very late, but I'm just wondering, it was interesting since I've been over in London, getting the European perspective on the catch-up required by the European Union for this. It's quite daunting. Anyone want to?
So I'll make a comment to that. It's actually pretty fascinating when you look at the numbers. So historically, China was well ahead of the curve, as I stated earlier, but they were looking at critical minerals in late 1999, early 2000s. So a good example is one key component of our batteries is we need cobalt. It's also a key critical element that needs to be done and needs to be secured. One of our largest sources of cobalt in the world is the Congo. In 1999, China's imports from Congo were about 1.9 million with an M. Today, China currently has $9 billion of imports from Congo specifically. Their highest import is copper, their second highest is cobalt. Now, Congo is 100% reliant on the Chinese for both imports and exports. Chinese leading export to Congo is actually mining materials. And so it gives you a good indication of the strategy that was implemented to not only secure the lithium resources, but also to determine all the other critical elements that go into a battery. And China started that over 20 years ago. But we're just starting today.
I agree. I agree 100%, because China has been ahead of the curve for a long, long time. With us, with our Chilean asset, we've had so many different approaches from Chinese people to kind of either off-take or a takeout. We saw over the border in Argentina, there was a price war between kind of various Chinese companies to secure assets over there as well. So is the rest of the world lagging behind? Will they follow up? Will the rest of the world kind of wake up for it? They will, definitely will. Kind of, we're seeing the Europeans and the Japanese and Southeast Asians kind of try and jump on the bandwagon as well. So I think there is a slow realization by the rest of the world that China is way ahead, and they will, I guess, when they've got the size of their population, if they're producing cars, EVs, then it's good for the environment anyway. Yeah, so is it working still?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Echo. So I think if we can see that China is moving ahead of the rest of the world, then the rest of the world need to catch up, and they will do so. And what we're seeing with our assets in Chile is there are other countries and companies coming along asking for our offtake, our production.
Yeah, I would say it is surprising how the automakers have been sort of late to catch up to this and not get more vertically integrated quicker. Yes, there have been some off-take conversations, and some are having geologists, but it's still relatively minor if you think about it. It's not that significant. And given their balance sheets, you would have thought, and given their production estimates and things, you would have thought they would vertically integrate a lot faster. But I think there's a bit of an awakening going on, both within the EV sector, but also politically. I mean, if you look to what Rishi Sunak was saying even yesterday, talking about the sort of strategic relationship between UK and China, there's no doubt that people are waking up now. China has always been very good with their long-term plans. That's always been part of their DNA. But I think increasingly China is thinking even more strategically, militarily, strategically, etc. So the long-term plans are even more focused on critical elements. And they have used critical elements as a negotiation tool historically. So don't underestimate the politics of this. And I think that's catching up in Europe now as well. So I think you're going to see a future that will be a little bit more virtually integrated on the business side. And you will see politics showing up a bit more, because people realize there's actually a problem here if you don't do anything.
I did have one more slide, but we're running out of time. So I just say thank you all for attending. And I would mention that the panelists are not going anywhere too quickly, so they will be around if you have any individual questions for them. And thank you to Mines and Money for this panel. Appreciate it.